Guten Tag, WAP. Let's make history today as we go over Unit 4, Day 14. We're going to finish up talking about Latin America in the 20th century. But let's get started with our daily punishment. What's the quickest way to make antifreeze? Just steal her blanket. Antifreeze, steal her blanket. Key terms for today: Batista, Fidel Castro, the Bay of Pigs, liberation theology, the Cuban Missile Crisis, hyperinflation, cartels, Pentecostal Christianity. We are going to go over the Cuban Revolution, Cuban communism, and the postmodern world, and the societal changes in Latin America after World War II. So let's talk about the Cuban Revolution. Ever since the 1906 Platt Amendment, after America won the Spanish-American War, Cuba became independent, but with the Platt Amendment, basically Cuba was a protectorate. America had permission to invade Cuba anytime they wanted to make sure that they have a pro-American government. Cuba's going to basically be a U.S. protectorate or a proxy state. This was continued to be the policy in the 1940s and 50s. Figurino Batista ruled Cuba from 1934 to 1944. He's going to rule Cuba all the way to the 1950s. He was a conservative leader who supported American business and was anti-communist. In the 1950s, Fidel Castro is going to rise to power in Cuba. He was young, idealistic. He was an opponent of Batista. In 1956, from exile, him and his supporters will invade Cuba. After 2 years of guerrilla warfare, they'll successfully oust Batista. He will create a communist regime in Cuba. He'll proclaim Cuba as a Marxist state with a centralized economy planning. When the U.S. severed ties with Cuba, he'll become increasingly dependent on communist Russia, the USSR. In 1961, America will support a failed invasion in the Bay of Pigs. This will cause Cuba to turn even more to communist Russia. America will blockade the island to get the Soviet missiles removed in the Cuban Missile Crisis. Social reforms under Castro were extensive, but they're often going to be at the extent of individual liberties. There will be universal health care, free colleges, but Castro does also kill and arrest his own opponents. He creates a totalitarian state. Let's talk about reforms in Latin America after World War II. Military governments are going to be prevalent in Latin America after World War II. We talked before about Perón and Vargas and Pinochet. You see that happen in a lot of Latin American countries. You will see single-party states, like in Mexico with El PRI. You will see Christian democratic parties formed in Latin America. This happens in both Chile and Venezuela. The Catholic Church becomes more involved in Latin America. Some priests became more liberal, and they're going to support a new belief called liberation theology, which blends Catholicism and tries to combine it with communism. It stresses the fact that Jesus supported the poor, and Jesus was always for the poor at the expense of the rich, trying to kind of make Jesus into a proletariat. Conservative Catholics did not like this. They thought it's bastardization of Christianity. Since the 1980s, you will see a democratic trend. Military begins to restore civilian government in the 1980s. However, there has continued to be a problem with economic stability in Latin America. There's been foreign debt, a lot of foreign debt owned to America. So a lot of these Latin American countries are in debt. Some of these countries have gone through hyperinflation, which is extreme inflation, where like a bottle of water might cost 2, 3, 4, 10,000 pesos. Low standard of living with increased urbanization. And there's been increased levels of criminal activity, often associated with the drug trade and the cartels in parts of Latin America. Let's talk about how life has changed for women. At first, there were slow changes for women's roles. Gender equality was a goal more than a reality in Latin America. In most of these countries, women did not receive the right to vote until the 1940s and 50s. Before World War I, a lot of women began to enter the industrial labor force, where they were paid less than men. However, by the 1990s, there's more women in elected office, including presidencies, in any other region in the whole world except for Scandinavia. Latin America has had a lot of female presidents. obviously more than America. The only region that has passed them is Scandinavia, Northern Europe. After the 1950s, there's been increased migration, both legal and illegal, to parts of North America. A lot of Central American countries went to Mexico where they have higher standards of living. A lot of Mexicans and other people from other parts of the world have migrated to America. So migration has become a much bigger issue, and that's caused issues in the United States with xenophobia and people that want to do immigration reform, want to legalize the people that have been here, and people that want to kick them all out, which has become a political issue. Jobs for illegal immigrants from Latin America working in the U.S. are a source of money for local economies. One of the big exports of how some of these countries, like in Mexico and other countries, get their money is when the immigrants in America send back their money to their people, their family members in Mexico or other countries in Central America or South America. You have seen there's been huge population increases in parts of Latin America since World War II. The population has plummeted in a good way. It's plummeted up. This is called the population bomb. Let's talk about some religious changes. Latin America is still predominantly Roman Catholic. We talked about liberation theology being a new Catholic belief. However, there has been a good amount of people in Latin America turning to a new Protestant Christian belief called Pentecostal Christianity. Pentecostalism is a form of evangelicism. It believes in being born again, fundamentalist faith, and speaking in tongues. That's become a bigger faith in Latin America during this time after World War II. Lastly, let's talk about the drug trade. The drug trade has become a greater problem in the world. Some of the big areas of drug production are places like Colombia, Bolivia. Some of the areas where the drugs are refined and processed are Colombia, Bolivia, Peru. A lot of times the Native Americans, the Amerindians, are basically used as slave labor in the drug fields. They're the only source of labor for them and a job. The cartels in some of these countries are going to dominate politics, and they kill the people that try to oppose them. Countries like Colombia have fought the drug trade bitterly. Bolivia has often cooperated with the dealers. Mexico has been racked by civil violence because of the cartels. Venezuela and Cuba have been involved in the drug traffic as places of hubs of stopping and where it's being smuggled in. In reality, a lot of the drugs now are controlled by the Mexican cartels. Many states are going to launder drug money. They're going to help them out. America and the DEA, the Drug Enforcement Agency, will often try to help, and they'll be tied to fighting the drug trade. This is one reason, other than the Cold War, that the U.S. has tolerated generals that seized power, because those generals helped America with the drug trade, which has not been overly successful trying to eliminate drugs coming into our country. All right, guys, that's all we have for Latin America. We'll be starting with some new topics next class. Until next time, deuces. Deuces, deuces.